welcome to Film Fam, inspired by true events. I'm Heather.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Zoe.
And we're the Grays. We're your Film Fam. For today's companion minisode to our Do the Right Thing episode, we're so excited to be talking to Myles Green and Max Vargas Ambris, NYU Tisch students. Welcome to the podcast, Myles, Max. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for having me. It's really great to be here. I'm doing okay. I can't complain. Got to be honest.
For our listeners at home, that voice was Myles.
Yes.
Max.
I probably should have slated before. How very actor of me to forget.
Max, what does your voice sound like?
And I'm Max. I'm doing pretty well, and thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for being on the show. I'm really excited to be able to talk to some more NYU Tisch students. You're living in New York, being talented, being actors.
Trying.
It's exciting. I guess, I asked you, how are you doing in a upbeat way? And I also want to say, but how are you doing?
There's such a switch in those questions. Now I feel like I got to give a serious answer. I got to be honest. Yeah, it's going pretty well, but it is troublesome. I feel like, with the current climate of society, especially with the things that are happening just in our society, and then COVID on top of it all, the big epidemic, the big problem of our world right now. It's difficult, it's difficult, especially learning in a college setting. But for me, I feel like I'm trying my best to plow through it and find new ways to overcome it.
As for me, I do feel like I'm doing pretty well on the whole. I'm in a place where I'm considering deleting Instagram again. I had to delete it back in June, and I'm thinking about doing it again just because it's hard for me. I want to stay as engaged as possible, but sometimes hearing all about brutality gets a little overwhelming. So I'm thinking about unplugging at the moment.
Yeah, that sounds like a healthy choice to make sometimes. Yeah,
it's a big decision though. I mean, because you want to know things and you want to be connected to your friends. And if it gets that bad that it's better to be disconnected than connected, that's a bad situation.
Yeah, and it's hard because especially we so much of our opportunities, I guess, or networking stuff is online, and I kind of wish it wasn't, because there's lots of times where I'm I wish I wasn't on Twitter as much as I am, but also that's where I post about shows and stuff like that, so it's hard to decide how much to be in that,
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's hard figuring out how involved you want to be, especially when it comes to the painful stuff. For me, I will say I relate to that, Max. I have considered deleting Instagram altogether, just shutting off all social media for a good while. That tussle inside your mind of what do you want to pay attention to? What do you want to stay engaged in? And I feel it may seem like you're just checking out, but when the pain is so prominent and so traumatic, it does make that it's a valid argument to make to yourself.
I mean, it's self-care, and that's important. You don't have to continue to traumatize yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Do the Right Thing then. Actually, we're not going to just talk about Do the Right Thing, but our last episode that this is a companion piece to was about Do the Right Thing and about the true events that inspired it. And it was a very heavy and hard and sad. And but I really just want to talk to you guys as actors, living in New York, same school that Spike Lee's at, and just, your experience in that way. And of course, anything, we can hold space for anything that comes up about this. But I guess my first question is, Do the Right Thing came out 30 years ago, and I would say it changed the landscape for Black actors and directors and Black filmmaking. Spike Lee said he wanted to start a conversation and change things. And he has since then continued to have that conversation a lot in his films. And I wanted to ask you, what are your experiences as an actor being a catalyst for social change?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really, really great question. I've sort of been asking myself the same question as I'm starting to develop as a black artist in this world. I actually remember I saw Do the Right Thing, I want to say a few years ago now. My dad showed me because just he had to, you know. And honestly, I didn't even get it. Not the entire thing, but especially the ending. The ending when Spike's character he like goes against like his bosses and he adds to the protest
Right.
and the sort of riot that is going on by throwing the trash can in the shop. Um, I didn't get it at first. And I sat there and I told him, I was like, okay, like I understand, but I don't understand why. And my dad explained it to me as well. And I didn't get that either until George Floyd was murdered. Then I got it because I feel like that sort of is part of a big part of the black experience. Like we experience so much pain and so much trauma on the day to day, and I guess sometimes it could seem difficult to like decide, which side do I choose? Do I decide to be civil or do I like let slip the dogs of war? You know, it's sort of like a moral dilemma, but at the end of the day, that feeling that you have to stick with your family, the feeling that you have to stick with those who are also going through the same pain, that was sort of the point to me. And that point was definitely made apparent after my dad definitely went in depth with that explanation, and especially after I experienced my own sort of trauma myself with the George Floyd murder. And I feel, to the question, that as an artist, I feel like that's sort of the almost, I guess, responsibility that I feel is falling to me, or at least the one that I'm trying to choose to take up, is that to get more of those messages out there, because I feel like especially as we go on in society and especially as more and more of these things happen, they get seen but they don't get recognized until someone talks about them. I feel like Do the Right Thing is a perfect example of this conversation taking place. So as a black artist and a black filmmaker and a black actor, um I definitely accept the responsibility of telling these stories and starting these conversations.
Yeah, on that note, I definitely feel like a lot of like theater and film that has to do with the black experiences can be super important to spread messages about black struggle and what it means to be black to non-black people. But I also think that one of the greatest ways to create change through those media is by trying to tell the story in a way that can connect to black audiences specifically. Because for me, I feel like when I see black stories being told, especially when it's clear that it's from a black perspective and when it centers black people and blackness and doesn't center white people in black stories, I feel like I feel more valued. I feel more inspired as an artist and just as a black person trying to live in this country. And I think that that can cause a lot of change too in terms of touching black people and helping black people feel that sense of community and feel like they can have a voice in society.
Mhm.
You know, I feel like Do the Right Thing was speaking to black people, which was why
Absolutely.
maybe a lot of white people were like, I don't get why Mookie did that. And Spike Lee said like, well, I think, a lot of black people got it,
Right.
like at the time.
Definitely. I
And
think that's one of the things that was revolutionary about it was because it wasn't. I mean, first of all, it's a black filmmaker making his film, but he wasn't making it to educate white people. He was making it just to show his own perspective, and black people would understand that, and white people would get it 30 years later.
Right, it wasn't like The Help.
Yeah.
Max, when did you get into acting and what inspired you to do so?
Well, I was 13 years old, and I had to be in a musical for eighth grade. I was in the Addams Family.
Oh,
I played Pugsley, and
aw.
yeah, and I didn't enjoy myself so much during the rehearsal process, But then Showtime finally came and I got to deliver my solo, and the feeling of the applause was just something I had never experienced before. And that's really what got me into it. I wouldn't say the applause is what drives me or motivates me so much now, but that feeling is definitely what got me addicted to begin with.
That's awesome. Myles.
Wow, yeah, really breaking in the old childhood memories with this one. Where to begin? No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I want to say I got into acting at the ripe old age of 9. Um, my dad is a film buff. Um, he's just a big like old school film buff, and so when I was 9, he was showing me this movie that I guess recently came out, something like that, and it was Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one.
Mm.
And I had seen the movies before. I had seen like other movies that he's shown me before. I was just like, okay, yeah, this is just another movie, da 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 da. Let's just go spend some time with my dad. But it was around the end, and I don't really know what it was, but Jack Sparrow, or I guess Johnny Depp, he was, doing something with his body, and he was just like really just moving and like encapsulating like the idea of this character. And I just sort of found myself like going into a trance, like just captivated by the performance, you know? And I really couldn't get up from my seat. And I just like sat there and just witnessed this. And then the movie went through, there was the falling action, everything like that. It ended, credits rolled. And then I just got up and I realized I want to do that. I want to do that and make and recreate that feeling in others. I want to create that experience for other children, for other people, for other artists who want that as well. And my love for the craft has evolved over time, but I always like to think back to that original feeling that it gives me to make someone else also experience that feeling.
That's awesome.
What was the, because I know for me, like, yeah, I loved acting since I was a kid, but it's like a choice to decide. Like we're all in the experimental theater wing at Tish, and like we're doing this like, 3 days a week from 9 to 6. Like we're devoting so much of our time to it and getting BFAs and stuff. Like was there a specific time that there was a choice of like, okay, this is like what I'm doing, like I'm gonna go to college for this, like I'm just really sinking like my my desires for my life into this career? Because it's I mean it's I feel crazy sometimes.
Yeah, I feel that over time, like over my life, there have been a lot of moments where I keep making that decision. Actually, when I first started, I think I got into acting at 9, but I really started at like 10. I had to use that year to get myself on my feet. And I went for it for a really long time, like all throughout like elementary school. I think it was like the beginning of middle school that I had my first break. And it wasn't because I hated acting or didn't like it. I just sort of stopped and I was like, okay, maybe this will work out, maybe it won't. I'm just gonna let it rest. And that feeling came back in the form of a new performance that I watched and a new experience that I watched. And I decided again, yeah, I want this again. And that's sort of how it's happened over my life. Like I've taken breaks and breaks, but the feeling comes back and I remind why I wanted to do it. And so then in that moment, I make the decision, I have to do this. And actually, recently along my college career, I've found myself making the same decision with like a bigger passion and a bigger drive because now it's not just something I'm doing on the side of school. It's like now this is real. Now this is like going into my career, and that is scary, but it also excites me. And that's why it's like pushing me even further. So yeah, you keep making that decision in my experience.
I feel like for me, the decision to really go all in with it came a lot later than it does for a lot of other young acting students I talked to. I didn't really know that that's what I was going to do until my senior year of high school, like the fall of my senior year. I was in rehearsal one day and it ended, and I just had been thinking a lot about what I wanted to do with my life. And there was just nothing but what I had just done that I wanted to do. And I was like, okay, then I just need to make that decision because I could pick something that is quote unquote safer, but I would rather pick something that's going to make me feel happy and feel satisfied with my choice. And even if I fail at doing that, I would rather try and hope for the best. And I think Myles brought up a really important point that you definitely keep making the decision over and over. Even now, I have doubts all the time. I think, did I make a mistake? Is there something I would be better suited for? But then I think, well, what do I want to do? And it's act. And I just keep making the decision.
Who are your favorite actors and actresses, maybe when you were younger and then now in the present?
See, I'm picky. See, I'm a picky person. So, because this is how this happens. I'm a very picky person. So I'll be like, oh, yeah, it's this one person. Then a list pops up in my head, and I'm like, oh, okay. But no, I would definitely say that before, like when I was a kid, I don't know if I was like intelligent enough to know like which actors I liked, but I did like performances from like stuff like Peter Pan, The Incredibles, Lion King, you know, a lot of those childhood movies, but those performances that even if they were a cartoon mostly, they stuck with me. You know, the story stuck with me. And now that I'm a jaded old man, I can go back and see other performances for what they are. And I've grown to like actors and actresses like Denzel Washington, Viola Davis. I really like Benedict Cumberbatch, and the late Chadwick Boseman. Honestly, has definitely become one of my favorites. Just because he is currently still such an inspiration to I feel like a lot of people, a lot of artists of color.
I feel like mine is kind of a silly answer because when I was a kid, my favorite actor was Logan Lerman because I thought he was cute and there was really nothing else to it besides that.
Wait, isn't that the boy from the like Perks of Being
Yeah.
a Wallflower?
Yeah.
Okay, I know who that is.
Funnily, I hadn't actually seen him in Wallflower. I saw him as Percy Jackson. That was my
Yeah.
first
Oh, right.
exposure
Classic.
to him. Now, I would definitely say Viola Davis is at the top of my list. Sandra Oh, I really love. And Jessica Lange. And it's just something about her voice for me. I feel like lots of actors have like a specific signature or something special, like some body part that they work really well. For Jessica Lange, I feel like it's her voice. And just anytime she's in a scene with anyone, I feel like I'm always waiting for her to start talking again because it just has such a command over me.
What are you liking her in? Is it the American Horror Story? Yeah.
And then I loved her again in The Politician. Everything, she works a lot with Ryan Murphy.
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
always
Yes.
excellent.
Yes. Yeah, she's great. And also, yeah, Viola Davis, Chadwick Boseman. Yeah, those are.
And we saw them
Agreed,
both
and-
in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I watched that, and then I had my parents watch it because I was like, you guys, this is like one of the best movies. Like, it's always movies that come
great.
from plays that really get me. Maybe I just like
Definitely.
plays.
Yeah.
So yeah, this mini-sode is, I said, a companion to our Do the Right Thing episode. Do you have other movies about the Black experience that you would recommend? Could you recommend for us and for our
Yeah.
listeners?
Yeah, definitely. I feel this one's very recent. It just came out, Judas and the Black Messiah, with
Oh,
with
yeah.
Keith Stanfield, Daniel Kaluuya, Jesse Plemons, and Dominique Fishback. Really, really great, really powerful. It's so good. It captures sort of that the Black Panther movement and other factions of that movement that was going on. Very sad, but I think it definitely encapsulates sort of everybody's mindset of what was going on in that time, and it's real. It's really real. So I definitely would recommend that one. Also, this one is an old movie, and I'm not entirely sure who hasn't seen it by now. But Hidden Figures with Taraji P Henson and Octavia Spencer and Janelle Monáe. That one's a really great movie. Because I feel like if Black men in this world are underappreciated and undervalued, that goes double for our Black women. And to see
Yeah,
like what
absolutely.
they do behind the scenes that really, really, really matters, that is a really good movie about that.
How about you, Max?
My go-to is always Moonlight, just because that one really stuck out to
yes.
me.
Yeah.
It talks a lot about masculinity and queerness in the Black community. which often sometimes I feel like gets overlooked. So that's something I really enjoyed that the movie dealt with.
Yeah, that I love that movie. I'm watching the American Film Institute's top 100 films is like a project I've been doing. They have one black director, one movie by black director on it. It came out the list came out in 2007. Still, that's not a good excuse. They have
It's
Do
not
the
that
Right
long
Thing.
ago.
No.
Yeah.
And my hope is to have watched all these movies and then throw some off and bring some on for my own list. And I have Moonlight on there, but also Get Out because I think that such a great movie.
Definitely a
And
great
I,
pick.
I'm always
Yeah.
Absolutely
looking
loved Get
for,
Out.
yeah, for more non-white guy movies that I can put on the list. Yeah. That's the majority of there's no women or female directed movies on that list. So we'll try to fix that. Yeah, this question's for both of you. Did you have black TV shows and movies that you got to watch a lot as a child?
Proud Family, even if it was like cartoon, I still
Yeah, the
think it
Proud Family.
counts. I still think it counts.
Yeah.
Sure, that counts.
Definitely a lot of good messages there. You know, I didn't watch this as a child, but around like the beginning of high school, my parents exposed me to shows like Martin, the Jamie Foxx show, and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I'll say I haven't watched them all consecutively, but always a classic, and I do like those kind of shows. And I feel like those kind of shows are just like putting us on the map, you know, just like that exposure, especially because like a lot of like, you know, those actors in a way that was like their start, you know, that's what kind of put them on the map. So yeah, those are really good shows that I very much enjoyed growing up.
Yeah. I watched Fresh Prince for sure as a kid, and I also was obsessed with the Boondocks.
Oh,
Oh,
To this day, one of my favorite shows ever.
so good.
Yeah, Martin and Fresh Prince, those are shows that we watched back in when they were coming out live.
Yeah.
Because we're old. Um,
I have a question I feel like springs out of both of your guys' answers to that question, which is that we're all in the experimental theater wing. For people who aren't like up in the know about all of Tish's studios, that means that we get classes also in like directing and writing, and it's a very like a place for acting, but also devised work. Have you guys like since coming into school or beforehand, like are you interested as an artist in like also creating your own work? And has that like changed since coming to NYU?
Yeah, most definitely. I'll say before coming to NYU, I was having more of a mind for acting. Like I had done things before. I had to direct my own one act for my senior project in high school, but that was mostly because I had to, not necessarily because I wanted to. I feel like I've always had an eye for it. I just never sewed into that. But getting into this school and getting into ETW, I will say that it's it's made me realize the variety of the things that I actually have interests in. And so
Yeah.
like definitely like even that's why I changed my Instagram bio like way back when to actor, director, dancer, etc., you know, because I do like to write as well as act, as well as direct, as well as, you know, so there's all sorts of things that I found out, oh wow, I really like doing this. And yeah, seeding into that is definitely something that ETW's helped me do a lot more.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I had a similar experience. When I first got into NYU, I was like, I'm just going to act. I don't want to get quote unquote distracted, is how I viewed it by other artistic interests. Um, but then I ended up directing a show the last term of high school, which I really enjoyed. And I feel like I always had sort of an interest in writing. And both of those two things have only been nurtured since coming to NYU. And I feel like I definitely have a lot more of an interest in creating as well as acting.
It makes me think of Spike Lee because I just think of him as like a director and a writer, and like sometimes I forget like he plays the lead in Do the Right Thing and is like holds his own amongst like famous like incredible performers, and I guess, I don't like think actor immediately when I think of him, but I do think that something that I've definitely learned is like it's so not binary. Like it's not you're a writer or a
Right.
director or an actor. Like especially if you want to in like the theater industry right now, I think you kind of want to be a lot of those things and you can be, which is nice.
Yeah, I don't get how he does that. I mean, the actors who are not directing are in their trailers or in some other room getting their makeup and their hair and their wardrobe, and they're getting ready mentally to do the scene. And other people are setting up the scene with the lighting and the props and getting everything in place. And the director has to be involved. When he's getting his makeup on, is nobody directing the lighting? Do they have to set that up? Is he awake like 20 hours a day setting stuff up? Then he has to go and get his hair done and his wardrobe. And then he's got to do dailies at the end of the day after removing the
Well,
makeup.
one of the things I read about what he said recently when someone asked him, do you have any advice for like young artists and directors and actors? And he said, like, I think he said, do the work your ass off. You can't let it, take it easy. You actually have to work really, really hard. So that's probably how he must do it. He just
Wow.
has a really, really great work ethic and
If
probably
it
was
were
working
me,
20 hours a day.
I would hire the best possible assistant director I could.
Do you feel like there is, like, how can society in general support young Black men and women and people of all genders in becoming artists and actors and directors? Like, do you feel like there's enough support out there, or how could you have been supported more?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like there's so many things like that could be done, but I guess to sum it all up, I would probably say one is the biggest thing is just listen. I feel like for years there's been spaces where it's like like people hear you, but they don't listen to you. Like a black man, a black woman can come into a space and be like, I have an idea. It's like, oh, okay, say your idea. But they're not really taking it in. They're not really like appreciating your time or like respecting it. I feel like listening is definitely a big thing. I also feel like constantly like creating those opportunities is definitely something that like can be done. And not just for acting, but throughout all of the creative fields. So for instance, if maybe a white director wants to tell like a black story, maybe actually ask a black director or a black writer to tell those stories. There are films out there
Right.
that this
Exactly.
hasn't been done and it shows. All I'm going to say. So definitely doing something like that.
Second date.
Yeah, definitely creating those opportunities definitely helps. And yeah, just listen and really just be open to change. I feel like the biggest thing in society is like we say we got to make a change, we got to make a change, but you can't really make a change or change can't happen if the people that you're trying to reach aren't willing to make that change. It can't happen.
Yeah.
So it's a two-way streak. And I definitely feel like, yeah, it takes two to tango.
My biggest thing, I think, is funding. There's tons of Black creators and Black students who are looking to become creators who have all this intelligence and inspiration and just don't have the money to fund it, whether that's their education, whether that's the projects, whatever it may be. I just think as much funding as we can channel into talented young Black people would be really helpful. I know lots of people, myself included, who are going into serious debt to try to get as much training and as much access as we can, and it's tough. I think that as much funding as young Black artists can get.
Do you guys have anything that you want to plug that where people can find you online, or any shows or anything?
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I just wrapped a few projects these last few weeks. One of them, the title of it's called Crime Pays. It's a little short film that my friend wrote, brought me in on it, and a ton of really great hands have been working on this project. Directed and written by the great Elijah Gordon. I say that because he's my boy, also known as the Solomon. Yeah, we just finished wrapping for that, and that's going to be dropping soon, so keep your eye out for that. And yesterday I actually just wrapped another project that doesn't really have a name yet, and can't say too much about it, but that'll most likely be dropping at the end of the semester. So keep your eyes out for that too.
At the moment, I'm not working on anything, just focusing on school right now.
And you might just be off of Instagram soon too. So
Yeah.
You're working on that self growth. Got to work on that self growth.
well, thank you both so much for being on.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you so much.
I am really excited to see whatever you guys are doing, and someday when not too long when you're out there working, I'll be like, oh yeah, I know them, and you'll have to say hi to me because I do know you now.
Strings attached.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank
you.
you. I'll
This
see
is
you
great.
guys.
Like Film Fam, inspired by true events. Subscribe to hear more stories that inspired our favorite films.
For photos and links from the show and other shenanigans, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook as Film Fam Inspired by True Events.
If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for movies that you'd like us to do, please email us at filmfampodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.